Addressing the problems of online instruction, applying ADDIE and the PBL method to train online faculty in instructional design, presented by Nathan Bullock and Amy Sluis, doctoral candidates in Applied Learning Sciences at the University of Miami. One of the biggest adjustments spurred by the pandemic of 2020 was the movement from face-to-face classes to online modalities, quite literally overnight. This shift forced countless unexperienced educators into an online teaching environment for which they were ill-equipped. After witnessing this transition and the struggles that accompanied it, the need for an online instructional module related to online course design became apparent. This project designed such a model for the adjunct faculty of Lone Star College's University Park campus in Houston, Texas. The goal of this project was to enhance instructor higher-order thinking in regard to the basics of online instructional design through the creation of an online training course. Under the model of problem-based learning theory, we designed, developed, and implemented a new online training lesson entitled Using ADDIE to Improve Online Instruction. The performance objectives that led to the instructional goal check off each of Bloom's revised taxonomy levels of learning, as can be seen here. We use the ADDIE methodology to design, develop, implement, and evaluate our project. After participants took the course, the project was evaluated based on the 3 levels of evaluation cited in Branch, which are perception, learning, and performance. Our theoretical foundations are grounded in the model of problem-based learning theory. We developed and implemented our training lesson using ADDIE to improve online instruction with PBL activities throughout. Before moving on to our procedure and methodology, we will provide a quick overview of PBL and its evolution. Problem-based learning theory is grounded in the work of educator John Dewey and his argument for a learner-centered instructional model. Dewey held that by presenting students with a problem to solve, we encourage the act of learning while increasing a student's metacognitive abilities. Barrows and Tamblin's model of problem-based learning involves a student taking on a patient problem or a research problem as a stimulus for learning. In the process of completing the exercise, the students further develop their problem-solving skills. For Bransford, a learning environment based on problem-solving allows students to better appreciate the information and increases the likelihood of this knowledge being used in the future. Duke, Grow, and Allen encourage students to identify and research the ideas and principles they need to know to solve the problems with which they are presented. The aforementioned research contributed to our understanding of PBL as a theory. However, most applicable to our project is the work of Erdogan and Bozeman. They build on the foundations of previous theorists to design a 21st century approach to PBL. Their simplified method focuses on 4 elements: initiation, management, deliverables, and assessment. Due to our own goals in this project, this method of PBL made the most sense for us to model in our own project design. The objective of our problem-based learning environment is to present faculty with a problem, manage their progress of solving the problem, collect a deliverable artifact, and evaluate their knowledge acquisition. The purpose of this project was to address a gap in knowledge of online instructional design amongst higher education faculty members at Lone Star College University Park. The topic of instructional design in online courses is extremely relevant today as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this project has therefore broader implications across higher education. As this project sought to design and implement a faculty development course that bridged the knowledge gap of faculty on the ADDIE methodology through the use of PBL, a preliminary review of literature was imperative before moving forward.
Our literature review found research in 3 main theme areas: faculty development for online learning, PBL in an online setting, and the use of ADDIE in online instruction. Meyer and Merle studied the content and training practices of faculty development courses on online teaching and found that hands-on training and online courses were frequently used. Sindag and Odobasi investigated how the usage of problem-based learning in an online setting influences the content knowledge, acquisition, and critical thinking skills of undergraduate students. Chin and Carliner examined the relationship between instructional designers and faculty and found literature on the topic has a bias toward instructional designers, with faculty less heard and the power dynamic creating challenges. Strickland et al. Found that the analyze and design phases of the process in designing an online course were essential and would heavily impact all following stages. Shaver stresses the importance of learning design meetings between course authors and instructional designers to share expectations and develop relationships. Trust and Pectos found that the timely and effective feedback was key to driving participation in an online course focused on teacher professional development. And Sheldon and Saltzman saw ADDIE as a critical guide to new faculty teaching online and recommended key best practices, such as establishing tone.
The following section will detail our procedure and methodology that we followed throughout this project. In order to study the success of this training from multiple angles, we employed a mixed method study. Both quantitative and qualitative data sources served complementary and triangulation purposes to address the evaluation levels of Kilpatrick's model of perception, learning, and performance. The first question examined the program's impact on learning and performance. The second question examined the participants' perception about the program and identified factors contributing to program success.
For our project, we launched a 5-week training covering the phases of ADDIE. This included roughly 1 hour per week of content that was completed using D2L, or Desire to Learn. We focused on developing ADDIE skills for instructors in online courses using PBL. We implemented the pilot in spring of 2021 with 7 participants, and the full implementation occurred in fall of 2021 with 6 participants.
As the table describes, multiple sources of data were collected to address each research question. Due to the small sample size, quantitative data was descriptively analyzed. Qualitatively, we valued each participant and their individual experience. In turn, we processed and compiled multiple sources of data to learn from each participant's learning experience. The table shows each research question and how it aligned with the data sources. A P denotes a primary data source, and an S denotes a secondary data source. Pre- and post-tests provided quantitative data on efficacy and course effectiveness. The average of the pretest was 7, and the post-test averaged 8.4, both out of 9. Besides small sample size, the fact that the pre- and post-test mean difference was not statistically significant could be attributed to the fact that 3 of the participants waited to take the post-test until 24 hours before the deadline, and 1 submitted within a few hours of its closing. Participants may have clicked through it very quickly due to the timing. It is also worth noting that with most participants scoring 7 out of 9, there was not much room for improvement on final post-test scores. Responses to our post-training survey indicated that our participants all felt they developed a deeper understanding of ADDIE in the course, and all the participants would recommend the training to a colleague. In the post-training survey, participants were also asked about their experience in the training. We saw evidence that all of our participants perceived the course to have improved their understanding of ADDIE. Results for each question of the pre-training and post-training surveys were averaged and are compiled in the table here. Additionally, we were able to pull participant engagement and retention data through the Flipgrid video responses. For each of the 5 weeks, participants submitted Flipgrid video responses to case study questions. In week 4, only 3 responded, and during our final week, only 2 participated. For the first 3 weeks, however, all 6 participated. Small sample size notwithstanding, it is important to note that 60% of our participants stayed active through the 4th week of course and in the discussions, compared to the 83% of the participants who completed the final project in the course. Essentially, more participants completed the final project than stayed engaged in the Flipgrid, and participants that fell behind on Flipgrid discussions still submitted final projects. We also collected data on each participant's engagement in the LMS platform. It is important to note that participant C has since left the college system and the access data was deleted, as shown in the table. Therefore, we only have data on 5 of the 6 participants. Each participant's course accesses across the 5-week period were noted, as well as the time spent within the platform. It is important to note that the platform itself served as the entry point to the training, but much of the engagement in the course was held in third-party sites like Edpuzzle and Flipgrid. Results can be found in the table here. In addition to observing videos for knowledge acquisition, we also studied the gesture analysis to better measure participant engagement in the discussions. The results of this gesture analysis are shown in this table, and the entire breakdown of our gesture analysis can be found in our report in Appendix K. Participant E proved to be the most engaged in the discussion, with 48 engaged cues and only 11 disconnected cues, reflecting an engagement score of 81%. The final projects were submitted at the end of the training course and required participants to demonstrate their knowledge acquisition and critical thinking skills. They were presented with the problem of having to move a face-to-face course into an online format. The projects were graded with the project rubric found here. To determine the results of our rubric for the students' submitted final project, each phase of ADDIE was given a point value from 1 to 5 based on the rubric, making the maximum score 25. We analyzed final scores to develop descriptive analytics on knowledge acquisition based on a passing score of 70%. Of the participants who submitted a final project, all 5 were able to score above a 70%, demonstrating understanding of the phases of ADDIE. After the interview, observation, and open-ended response questions were coded and sorted, we identified 5 thematic categories. The first category, analytical feedback, repeated ideas including Flipgrid reflections, self-awareness, the need for more in-depth training, and the need for 2 versions of the course. The second coded category, practical elements, had key takeaways that centered around the helpfulness of the course content and the practicality of the application-based course project. Third, knowledge sharing. Identified ideas from this category include sharing of knowledge amongst peers. Through the interviews, observations, and open-ended responses, we learned that peer sharing was occurring throughout the entire training, even whenever the trainers and creators did not necessarily have that in mind. Our fourth category focused on frustrations with the course. This category is made up of multiple ideas that relate to Flipgrid or practical applications in the training. In fact, participant C spoke in his interview about how he felt conflicted with the usage of Flipgrid. Our fifth and final category was course design. Our biggest takeaway validated our course length and our course structure. One of the most powerful open-ended responses a participant left on a post-training survey highlighted the strengths of the course structure, stating, "Everything felt helpful, but I definitely feel like I gained more information from the videos where Amy and Nathan walked us through each of the steps in comparison to the initial ADDIE training videos. It is very helpful to hear someone relate the training to specific scenarios in an educational setting versus more generalized examples." We collected feedback in our open-ended survey responses that really showcased the narratives of each of our participants. Here are a few examples of how they found the training to be helpful and directly applicable to their current position.
We believe the results of this training demonstrate that learning was accomplished and the perception was strong from students, with a rating of 6.5 out of 7 for designing an online course. Community was key to learning, with students enjoying working with one another to accomplish course goals. Retention was comparable to the pilot project at 83% compared to 87.5% in the pilot. This was probably impacted by the ongoing pandemic effects and the timing of the implementation. However, the timing was difficult to change given the timeline of the doctoral program itself. A small increase of 7 to 8.4 in pre versus post test scores was observed, which was less than we had hoped, but this is likely impacted by the drop off of participation in the weeks as the weeks went on and the end of the term neared for faculty participants, and it still shows some level of increase pre and post. Post survey ratings were all at 6.5 or higher. Course structure at 6.9 out of 7 likely reflects the impact of the pilot on the overall project. Separating the trainings into a more novice and more advanced section could add to effectiveness. This was something that came up during the pilot as well as in the final implementation, but time for developing this just didn't really allow us to achieve that kind of goal during this project. Flipgrid was overall a highly popular and provided a welcome opportunity for the faculty participants to interact with their colleagues in a dynamic way. From this perspective, it certainly could be viewed as an opportunity for both administrators as well as course designers to create a more dynamic, interactive video experience for students and for providing this type of interactive video discussion could be seen as a best practice for course designers, as well as for administrators looking to engage faculty and staff during a period of social distancing, or when other factors prevent in-person interaction. There are certainly some limitations to this study. For example, sample size and being conducted at one institution may impact the ability to replicate the study. One researcher knew most participants in a collegial or supervisory relationship, which could also impact results. And the timing of the delivery may have impacted the participation, but it was somewhat unavoidable due to the schedule of the doctoral program and when we were able to implement. COVID-19 is likely the most disruptive force higher education has faced in at least half a century. In addition to exacerbating existing challenges such as demographic and population shifts and the evolving use of technology in academia, the pandemic has highlighted a need for the ability to rapidly pivot to new learning modalities such as online and remote instruction. In this project, we sought to provide a resource to faculty moving swiftly to online learning and to understand the resultant perceptions, engagement, learning, and improved performance. Our results revealed that participants felt their knowledge of instructional design increased. They were heavily engaged in the training program and valued the sense of community within the training and found problem-based learning to be an extremely valuable tool for their learning.